Hi all, welcome to Project-mis. My name is Sumit Kumar Ambastha, and in today's video we are going to talk about Agile Project Management. It's a methodology which is used while managing the project. So Agile these days is not only limited to software development but also in other different industries like manufacturing, automobile, aviation, etc. So all these different industries, organizations are using Agile. So definitely there is something which is making Agile very popular, very flexible, very efficient. So while going through the Agile project management style, we'll first understand what is Agile, and then we'll understand the underlying values and principles of Agile. And after that, there are certain frameworks which are used while implementing Agile. So we'll also talk about those frameworks, and then some real-time example and the challenges what organizations are facing when they decide to implement Agile in their organization. So we'll talk about all these points one by one. So let's begin. What is Agile? Agile is a project management and product development approach characterized by flexibility and adaptability. So it's a flexible project management approach. So if you are a project manager of or if you are working in any of the project, then definitely there will be some approach which project is following. And then the one of the project management methodology is Agile, which you can also follow. Before Agile, one popular project management methodology was Waterfall. So that everyone, most of the people are quite familiar with Waterfall, and these days Agile is a transformation in the project management style. So Agile has certain values, certain principles, and it works in the iteration, and mostly it believes on customer satisfaction. It reduces the gap between the expected and the actual value from the customer side. So that is the main benefit of Agile, but how it reduces the gap in the actual versus expected value, that will come to know in some time. What is quite popular about Agile is iterative and incremental development. Iterative means we will be talking about a smaller duration, which can be 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, or 4 week, whatever it is. If you decide while starting the project of 2 weeks of iteration, then that is your iteration duration is fixed as a 2 weeks or 3 week. Mostly, it is not recommended to change the iteration. Whatever you decide while starting the project, that should be constant throughout the project life cycle. And then incremental development. So what we say, whatever work I am doing in the project, I will make smaller pieces of that work, and then I will plan what I will be doing in the first iteration, what I will be doing in the second iteration, and every iteration to iteration I keep working, and I keep generating some value, and I keep showing that iteration output to the customer, and that is only called increment. Because if you are working for first 2 weeks of duration in example, then I will be making some version of software, whether it is basic only, but I will show that to customer when the iteration gets over. So customer will see at least what is that, in which direction the development is happening, and if he has any input that can be accepted, that can be adapted, and the changes can be brought in the next iteration. So that is how it reduces the gap between the actual and the expected value. And every iteration you add in your previous development. So that's why the development what you show to customer on every iteration is the incremental. So what you see today, after 2 weeks, there will be something extra, and again after 4 weeks, there will be something extra. So every iteration, as we grow in the project management, the increment size becomes bigger and bigger, and that is what adding value to the customer, but to the nearest value what customer is expecting. Then enhancing flexibility framework that accommodates changes even late in the development process. If you are following the old project management style, which is waterfall, then At later stage, if you come to know there are some changes needs to be done, then it is very tough to adapt it, because it is a process driven, step by step, phases driven process. So if you are at stage 3 and there are some changes, then again you have to go back to phase 1 and do the same work. So it consumes lots of time, and it is not so flexible to even to adapt it at that point of time. But because of the iteration and the incremental approach for agile, flexibility is there. So if after 4 weeks of development customer realizes some changes in the output, in the value what customer is expecting, then in that case we can take that as a new requirement. We can work with the customer, understand on the priority when this change has to be accommodated, and based on that, that that can be addressed, and that is what is the flexibility. So in nutshell, this is what is called agile project management style. When agile is brought into the practice, it has come with certain values and certain principles. So any methodology what we are following does not work without specified values and principles. So in brief, we'll understand what are those values and principles for agile. So for to introduce this concept, Agile has published one manifesto which has 4 values and 12 principles. And we'll understand in brief that what is the motive of these values and principles, and why these are so important, which is giving lots of value to customer, and that's the reason most of the companies are thinking to start following agile, and even so many companies have shifted to follow agile. So let's understand values. First one, individual and interactions over process and tools. So Agile says don't go for process and tool based approach. If you're working in a project, believe more on individual, whether it is the team or it is stakeholder. Believe in individual and interaction. There is something, you identify who is the concerned individual, you have a discussion with them, and that's how figure out what should be the next step. That is individual and interactions. It reduces the gap because we are directly working with stakeholders during the development phase. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Now we know that in agile that every after end of every iteration we have a connect with the customer, which and we show the review to show them what is the increment at the end of the iteration. So we are collaborating with customer very often, and that is the reason whenever there is some deviation in the output what customer is expecting, we identify those deviation immediately during the end of the iteration, and we figure out the way to accommodate it, and we adapt into the next iteration. Third value, working software over comprehensive documentation. So if I finish my 2 weeks of iteration, and then whatever work is done, I should be showing that value, I should be showing that software, whatever is the project is about, whatever work is done at the end of that particular iteration, we will be showing that to the customer directly. So it is the working software, whatever is done we are showing that to customer, instead of showing them a ppt which says this story is done, that part is done, this is pending, that part is pending. Not like that. I will share my screen. If I am a developer, I will share my screen and I will show my screen to the customer and show them this is what we have done. So that is what brings customer satisfaction, and they are always feeling like aligned with the development process. So working software over comprehensive documentation. Then responding a change over following a plan. So if there is a change which comes on your way during the project management, then we have to respond. We don't have to say okay, we have to go with this phase, we have to go back to previous phase, we have to make some changes, again we need to take the sign off and then we'll come back. No, if there is a change, respond to that change, talk to customer, capture the requirement, understand the priority, and bring it in the line, and that is what responding to change. So these are the four values which are following by agile project management style. Then there are 12 agile principles. We start with customer satisfaction. In this development approach, customer is always aligned in alignment with the development approach, and that is why customer satisfaction is there. Welcome change. Anytime customer is coming with the change, we have to accept that change. We have to figure out the way how and when that change can be adapted, what can be the implication. We put across those things in front of customer, and customer says okay, we go ahead. If customer says no, we stop, but we welcome change. Deliver frequently. So because we are talking about the smaller iteration, which can be 1 week, 2 week, or 3 week, so every end of that iteration we are delivering some value, and that is why we are delivering frequently. Working together. So it is about the collaboration where the agile team, and the customers, they are working together, and that is why this brings that culture where all the feedback observations are accommodated on time. So working together makes lot of difference, especially along with customer. Motivated team has to be motivated, because we are talking about an agile team should be cross functional, and when team is working, they should be motivated, they should understand what is the expectation from them, and they should be working with full dedication. Face to face interaction. Agile suggests that if you have something where you need to talk to someone, always better approach is to face conversation. If it is like in the same office, we can have that in person conversation. If that is not the case, better to schedule a call and have a face one to one call with the stakeholder, and get that sorted. So face to face conversation. Working software. We know at the end of every iteration, we show the screen to the customer, show the demo, that whatever work is completed by the end of that iteration, and whatever piece of output is created, that is what is called working software. Constant pace. So this is like a kind of like a regular practice which we are following. So we are first agreeing on the duration of the iteration, and we are keep following that iteration. After you work for 2 or 3 iteration with the development team, then you will understand like that at every such iteration, what uh, kind of volume, or size of the development you can complete in one iteration, and that's why you make that calculation, you forecast, and you start working with the same pace on regular basis. Whatever number of iteration is there, for that iteration you can work with the same speed constantly. Good design. It always emphasize on working with a good design and good technical specification. We should not follow some shortcut approach which brings technical debt in the project. Technical debt in the sense, to do some work in that software development, we follow some approach which is not an ideal approach for that particular solution, but it gives the interim solution. So we follow that approach. But we know that after a certain amount of time, we have to rework on that, and we have to fix it. So when you are going to rework on the same piece of information by following a different technical specification or technical code, then whatever time you have spent in the earlier time to fix the same piece of work with the wrong approach is a waste of time for you. So while following that wrong approach, we know that we are going to correct it in the future, and that is what is a technical debt, because we are carrying that with us and we have to repay it whenever the time comes. Simplicity. It has very simple basic approach which we should be following, and that is what is called simple framework, simple approach. Agile project methodology. And we don't have to make it complicated. It's a very simple concept. It will not take much time for you to Agile project method management methodology. You just learn it and follow it. That's it. Let's not make it complicated. Self organization. Agile teams are expected to be self organized. Each and every team member should understand their roles and responsibility, and they should know when and what needs to be done. They should understand what they are supposed to deliver at the end of the iteration, and they should be following it. Challenges will be there, challenges will be coming during the work, but self management, self organization culture bring that proactiveness which should be taken by the team and resolve all those challenges and issues. Reflect and adjust. This is the ongoing activity for continuous improvement. When iteration is getting over, we get together along with the team. We talk in detail that what was good in the last iteration, what was not good in the last iteration. So after that discussion, you can figure out there was something which has some scope to improve, and then you discuss with the team, agree some action point, and understand who is responsible to implement those action point, and let's move ahead. So that is what reflect and adjust. So we keep improving ourselves at the end of every iteration, and that's what brings culture of continuous improvement. So these are the 12 agile principles which is expected from any of the agile team. Now in brief, I'll talk about the comparison between agile and waterfall. So by this diagram we can see waterfall has a different phases, and what happens, these phases are not cyclical. So what happens, we start with the defined requirement and then move to design. So when defined requirement, when this phase is getting over, then we will be taking certain kind of sign off from the stakeholders, and after that sign off we will move to the design phase. Then the designing will start, and when the designing will be completed, then we'll take the sign off and then we'll move to the code phase, and that's how we move phase by phase. Now what happens, assume we are at the code phase and there is some change suggested by the customer. So we cannot accept that change in the code directly. Again we have to go back to the defined requirement. We have to accommodate that change from the customer. We might have to do the changes in design again after that, and then we have to come back to the code. So it's a lengthy process, long process which has to be followed, and that is why waterfall project management style is not flexible to accommodate customer requested change, and that is why it brings some constant for the projects. So this is in nutshell what is all in brief. And if you take a look on the diagram of agile, then it starts with number one, requirement. Then whatever requirement is there, we plan, like what piece of requirement we can cover in the agreed iteration. That is what is planned. And then we have a discussion with the technical team and understand what will be the design, and if design needs to be prepared by some designer, those pieces will be prepared. Development will start, and when the iteration gets over, we will show the demo to customer, and once customer is fine, so that will be released also. And after release, we take the feedback from customer stakeholders, and then we plan with the customer when to accommodate those feedback, and then again this cycle will start. So this six step what we see here, that is the cyclical phase on every iteration, whatever period we decide, whether 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, whatever it is. For that particular iteration, these are the steps the whole team will be for keep on following one by one, and that is what it makes more flexible and efficient approach, because it is giving that flexibility to customer that they can even suggest changes at later stage of the project. which is very important because these days, like when we are working on any project and customer sees the actual outcome, they get lot of new ideas, new suggestions, which has no scope in waterfall but has open space, open scope in agile. There are certain limitations which you have to definitely cross check, but it has that flexibility to accommodate it easily as per the style of agile project management. Agile framework. What happens? Agile has certain values and principles. We have just now gone through. Agile has four values and 12 principles. So, by using those core values and principles, different frameworks are derived. Derived in the sense, a project management approach, which is called Agile Framework, is derived, and that is following those underlying four values and principles, but came with additional set of their own values and approach which they are suggesting to follow. By doing that, there are different frameworks are introduced. I have listed some of the framework. This is not the only list of framework for agile. The list is longer, but I have taken few common popular one which are being used across organizations these days. Scrum number one, Kanban number two. This numbering is just a number. It has no impact on the priority and the popularity of these framework. They're just sequence. So Scrum, Kanban, Lean, XP, DSDM, Crystal, feature driven development, safe. These are a few framework. So what it means, Scrum is one of the agile framework. So agile is a project management methodology. Under agile there are different framework which are primarily following the core values of agile and principles, but also they have their own approach. So Scrum will be having something to differentiate from other frameworks. Kanban will be having something different than other framework. Lean is something which is not in line with the Scrum and Kanban, something different than others. So when we are starting a project and when we say that I have to follow agile, then after agile I also have to decide which framework I am going to use. And when I say I will be using Scrum, so I will be following Scrum approach. If I say I just need to visually monitor my my task list, whether what is the stage of each of the task, whether it is done or not, that can be served by Kanban. So then I will say no, I want to follow Kanban, so like that. So when you, while starting the project, when we decide which we have to follow agile methodology, then first thing we decide, okay, agile methodology is decided. Now let's decide which framework we are going to use under agile. And then we will be choosing some of the existing framework which are there. You pick it, read about it, understand what works good for your project, pick that framework and start following. That's the agile and agile framework. Let's understand some success stories. So, as I said earlier, that Agile is not only limited to software development. There are different industries, so many variety of organizations, and everyone is following Agile these days. And they are actually enjoying the benefit of being Agile, which is being adaptive to absorb customer suggest, customer feedback. So when we work in the real time environment, we actually, whatever is our core value, service or product, we are doing that for our customer. And these days, because of the social popularity, we keep getting customer feedback, and because we are giving certain value to customer are expressing their observation, positive, negatives. From there, we are taking those feedback, we are absorbing, we are analyzing, and then wherever we realize that needs to be implemented, that needs to be brought into the production, then we work on it and work with the agile team and get that changed. So that's why we have an approach where we can react instantly whenever we are getting the feedback from customer or anyone. So Spotify, Salesforce, Amazon, the list is huge. So many organizations are using Agile, but Spotify, Salesforce, and Amazon, these companies are using Agile at its best, and they are every every iteration they are doing something, and we are seeing those changes in Spotify, Salesforce, Amazon, or any of the organizations because they are responding to customer feedback in very shorter span of time. So Spotify, Salesforce, and Amazon are some or three of those list where which are using Agile towards core and using all its benefit what a project management can serve. One important thing about Spotify is that, as I said, that under Agile there are different framework, and when we are working as a project, then we have to also decide under Agile which framework we are going to use. Agile is a methodology, and then there are different framework, and we are choosing which framework we are going to follow. When we talk about Spotify has not chosen any other framework. Instead, they have derived their own framework which is called Spotify model. We have to go to that the case study about Spotify, and we have to read about it. That will give you more clarity that what is that Spotify model. But that also is one possibility that you are not choosing any of the existing framework. Instead, you know Agile to that level, you have that understanding about the project at that level, that you are in a position to derive your own approach, and you can even do that. And that is what Spotify has done. So these are the success story of Spotify, Salesforce, and Amazon. Now, what happens when we look for any of the organizations which are not following agile methodology, and either organization is deciding on its own to start implementing agile, or based on someone's suggestion they start implementing agile. So there are certain basic challenges which every organizations are facing. So those challenges are what? They are few common challenges which is mostly behavior driven challenges and sometimes process driven. So let's understand. The first one is cultural resistance. Cultural resistance is what? Agile is a mindset. No, it is not something which we is a template based structure which we implemented and we can say that we are agile now. So agile is a mindset game. So any organization says we are agile, that does not mean they have implemented some kind of magic or tool which made them agile. So everyone in the organization has to understand what is agile. They have to understand how agile function. They have to understand its value and its principles, so they can understand the benefit each of those values and principles are bringing in their approach. So cultural resistance is there. Few organizations are just by following a scrum model or by using Jira, they start calling them they are agile. But that's a very immature uh, immature uh, comment statement where they say they are agile. Agile is a mindset where each and everyone from the organization should understand about agile, their importance, values, principles, and they should be in a position to correlate that values and principle with their day-to-day job, so that can bring some value for customer. That is not happening, and we face lot of resistance from the employees. They are not willing to learn agile. Even though they learn, they still on their own they realize what is the benefit we are going to get out of it, because they don't understand the actual value what agile is bringing. So cultural resistance is there. It can it can be narrowed down over a period of time. It cannot be done instantly, but that is one of the challenge which every organization will be facing: cultural resistance. Scaling issue. We when anyone, goes deeper into agile and the framework, we understand the agile always, recommends a smaller team size, which is 10 or lesser number of people. But that is not the ideal size for any organization, right? Because organization is huge, so scalability issue is there. So if we are just following agile, we don't understand how agile can scale, then that issue or challenge will be there. So if we know agile in a proper way, scalability is not the issue. It's just the way things needs to be organized, and scalability will be resolved. But until and unless organization accept that fact that scaling is not the issue, then scaling can be fixed. But if they are having with that mindset, if they are having that mindset which says we cannot scale if we are following agile, then there is a challenge. So scaling issue is there, which requires some kind of expertise to ensure that we are not getting some constant when we have to scale into the project management for the organization. Then continuous improvement. So it's a again behavioral cultural challenge what we face. So what happens, we have learned about that iteration. So at the end of every iteration, we take the feedback, we get the feedback from customer, we get the feedback from internal team members. We identify what is good for the project, what is not good for the project. Whatever is not good for the project which happened in the current iteration, we look for working on improving on those stuff. And everyone has to accommodate those action point to overcome those shortcomings. And that is again, it depends on the individual if they are able to absorb it. So it's an ongoing activity. Every At the end of every iteration, we are doing that. We are agreeing some action point. We are improving on that. So that's why we are every day we are making ourselves stronger and stronger, and the agile team is turning into a good agile team because they are improving on their past learning. But we face some challenges because, employees are not very supportive sometimes to accept those improvement approach on every iteration quite frequently, because it looks like they are having a regular process of improving on them. It can be anything what comes in their mind, but continuous improvement is again a challenge when we talk about implementing agile in any of the organization. So so that's about the challenges when any of the company organizations are using to implement agile. So I hope this video helped you to understand a bit about agile. Considering the time, we could not go into the deeper aspect of agile, and we could not discuss much on each of the framework because it has lots of content inside it, so it needs time. But in nutshell, in brief, it should give some idea to you about agile project management and values principles, and the details about framework and the challenges when we see while implementing agile. If you have any doubt, any question, any of the input from your side, it is behavior driven approach. So you also start following agile as I am following agile in all my approach. And if you have any of the feedback, please feel free to drop me a note. If you want to get in touch with me, I have mentioned all my contact details here about YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my direct contact number. Please reach out to me. And if you have liked this video, you think this video is helpful to understand agile and the framework about agile, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share among your friends. Thank you so much.